Scream 4, what is your favorite scary movie? Well, if you're into meta-horror, razor-sharp dialogue, and a whole lot of stabbing, it might just be Scream 4. Hey everybody, welcome back to your channel name. Today we're diving into the 2011 slasher sequel that brought back Ghostface for the 21st century. Directed by the legendary Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson, Scream 4 hits us with a mix of nostalgia and modern horror tropes. But does it live up to the original trilogy? Let's find out. The movie opens up with a classic Scream fake-out. Or is it a double fake-out? Maybe even a triple, honestly. By the time the Stab franchise intro ends, you are already wondering what's real and what's not. And that's exactly what this film wants. We're back in Woodsboro, and Sidney Prescott, played once again by the amazing Neve Campbell, is on a book tour, trying to move on from her traumatic past. But of course, Ghostface isn't ready to let her go. Cue the murders. Enter the new generation. We've got Jill Roberts, Sidney's cousin, played by Emma Roberts, and her group of high school friends. Each of them fits into a horror archetype, but with a modern twist. The film pokes fun at remakes, social media, and the obsession with fame, all while delivering brutal kills. With characters like Kirby, the horror-loving badass played by Hayden, Panettiere, and the tech-savvy Charlie, the movie leans hard into its meta-roots. It's a commentary on how horror-and audiences have changed since 1996. But let's talk about Ghostface. The kills in Scream 4 are bloodier, the chases are longer, and the tension is cranked way up. Wes Craven proves he's still the master of suspense. And just when you think you know who the killer is, bam, plot twist. Now, I won't ruin everything for those who haven't seen it, but the reveal of who's behind the mask is the Hef's kiss. It's bold and shocking, and ties into the film's theme of chasing fame in the digital age. Let's just say it's a killer commentary on modern culture. 10 years have gone by, and Sidney Prescott, who has put herself back together again, in part thanks to her writing, is visited once more by the Ghostface killer. Sidney Prescott, now the author of a self-help book, returns home to Woodsboro on the last stop of her book tour. There she reconnects with Sheriff Dewey and Gail, who are now married, as well as her cousin Jill and her Aunt Kate. Unfortunately, Sidney's appearance also brings about the return of Ghostface, putting Sidney, Gail, and Dewey, along with Jill, her friends, and the whole town of Woodsboro in danger during the week marking the 15th anniversary of the original Woodsboro murders. High school students Jenny Randall and Marnie Cooper are killed by ghosts. The following day, Sidney Prescott returns to Woodsboro to promote her self-help book, with her publicist, Rebecca Walters. With evidence found in her rental car, Sidney soon finds herself a prime suspect in the murders, and has no choice but to remain in town until they are solved. Sidney's cousin, Jill Roberts, who is trying to deal with the unfaithfulness of her former boyfriend, Trevor Sheldon, receives a threatening phone call from Ghostface, as does her friend Olivia Morris. Jill and Olivia, along with their friend Kirby Reed, are interrogated about their calls by Dewey Riley, now the town's sheriff, as his deputies Judy Hicks, Anthony Perkins, and Ross Haas help him in the case. Gail Weathers, Dewey's wife, is trying to overcome writer's block and decides to investigate the murders against her husband's wishes. That night, as Sidney stays over with Jill and her Aunt Kate, Olivia is killed by Ghostface as Jill and Kirby watch in horror from across the street. Sidney herself is then confronted by Ghostface, and they fight until Ghostface is forced to flee when Perkins and Haas arrive. At the hospital, Sidney fires Rebecca after discovering that she wants to exploit the murders to boost book sales, and Rebecca is killed by Ghostface at a parking garage. Gail enlists the help of two high school movie fanatics, Charlie Walker and Robbie Mercer. Charlie deduces that the murderer is playing according to horror remakes, and Gail and Sidney assume that he is going to attack the Stabathon, which is a screening party organized in a barn in which teenagers spend their days watching all 7 movies of the Stab franchise. In this party, Gail disguises herself as a participant in order to investigate. However, Ghostface stabs her in the shoulder. Both Haas and Perkins, tasked with guarding Jill's residence, are killed. She learns from another taunting call from Ghostface that Jill has left for Kirby's before Ghostface attacks her and Kate and kills the latter. The after-party at Kirby's house is where Ghostface begins his killing spree, including the murder of a drunk Robbie. Sidney arrives at the house to leave with Jill, when they are both chased by Ghost. As Sidney calls Dewey, while attempting to locate Jill, Kirby frees Charlie from bondage, gagging and now stab her, immediately before killing her, finally making it known that she was indeed Ghostface. Now the killer leaves Charlie bleeding on the floor, finally exposing herself to Sidney's encounter. She confesses to planning the murders due to envy over the attention received by Sydney for surviving earlier murder sprees, and in hopes of gaining notoriety as a pseudo-murder victim, wishing to frame Trevor as Jill kills Trevor and turns on Charlie by stabbing him to death in a last attempt to make Trevor's body be found by framing Charlie as Trevor's accomplice, so she is left to be the sole survivor. She then stabs Sydney and maims herself to further incriminate Trevor. Dewey and the police arrive as Sydney and Jill are taken to the hospital. After learning that Sydney has survived, an infuriated Jill goes to her hospital room and makes one final attempt to kill her, but Sydney fights back. Dewey, Gail, and Judy intervene. After Dewey learns she is the killer by the fact that Jill somehow knew exactly where Gail was stabbed, Gil subdues Dewey and Judy and holds Gail at gunpoint, but Sydney incapacitates Jill with a defibrillator and ultimately kills her by shooting her heart. Dewey calls in all police units as reporters outside erroneously name Jill as the sole surviving hero. So, is Scream 4 worth your time? Absolutely. It's a love letter to the original while carving its woody path. As Sydney calls Dewey while attempting to locate Jill, Kirby frees Charlie from bondage, gagging, and now stab her immediately before killing her, finally making it known that she was indeed Ghostface. Now the killer leaves Charlie bleeding on the floor, finally exposing herself to Sydney's encounter. She confesses to planning the murders due to envy over the attention received by Sydney for surviving earlier murder sprees, and in hopes of gaining notoriety as a pseudo-murder victim, wishing to frame Trevor as